Florida State basketball fans. Ariya Massoudi here. Tuck Talk is back, and we've got a special guest joining us here. Bob Ferrante, as always. You know, the man, the smooth, silky, soothing voices of Bob Ferrante, and Adrian Crawford, former Florida State basketball player, 97 to 2001. One of my favorite people in Tallahassee, knows Florida State in and out, and he's doing some big things now these days. Adrian, I want you to update the people on just what you've been up to.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. I have been, right around a little bit later in the summer, early in the fall, I was approached, by Florida State, by IMG, about potentially joining Gene Deckerhoff. Is doing play-by-play. And so, so I jumped in and joined Gene doing play-by-play in the midst of all this. And it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. Gene's such a legend, such a professional, and and he's made it easy for me. It's amazing how much Gene can recall, being on there and the information he recalls. So it's easy. I tell people I'm like Klay Thompson. All I got to do is with Gene, I just shoot corner threes, one dribble pull-ups. You know what I'm saying? Light work. Gene Gene's out there with Steph with, eight dribbles, floaters, doing about that. I just catch and shoot threes and put it down. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it, man.
Yeah, and you and I have worked together quite a bit now over the years on the ACC network digital side of things. But I've always been amazed at how easy Gene Deckerhoff makes it sound. I mean, it's just like it's as much as we prepare and as much as we have to work super hard, Gene just starts talking, and it's like he was born to be on the radio and to do broadcasting.
He does, but the one thing that I think that probably is the most impressive is watching actually Gene's prep. Man, I mean, I think he just has such a system, but man, he really preps. I mean, Gene's looking deep and Gene, because we're in COVID the other day before, Gene's frustrated because he doesn't have a physical media guide. You know what I'm saying? I got a, media guide. I'm like, I wanted to say Gene, there's a thing called the internet, right? You know what I'm saying? We can get your digital copy if you want one, but he prepares, man, at such a high level. I'm talking about how he recalls, and even just the things he looks for. He looks for, and when's the last time we did this? The other day, he's like, I wonder when was the last time we shot, over 60%. He's like, I wonder if that's happened in the ACC. And he's looking it up. I mean, just what he recalls, it's an amazing thing, man. Especially doing it for so long, you love to watch somebody be a professional like that.
And then just tell us a little bit, too, about the Black and Mild podcast, because that's something that, you started with Ariya, Schofel over at Warchant, and I've listened to a couple episodes, and I love it. I think it's such a good balance of life, and you two play off each other well. And then you added Corey Simon, a former Florida State football player as well, into the fold. How much fun has that been for you?
It's been fun. We all felt bad for Corey. He didn't have anything to do with his life. And so we just said, hey, we know you're an NFL guy and all that. So come join us. Look what they did. I tell him, I take credit for him. Corey's been named CEO of Volunteer Florida. It all started with the Black and Mild. You know what I mean? So it's been my whole life. Me and Corey have been best friends for 20 years. I say, listen, I've been carrying you my whole life. So anyway, but no, it's fun. What we do with the Black and Mild, and actually we're going to be starting back up soon, is just, honestly, a place for authentic conversation. You guys have seen the current madness of our world. We wanted to create a space where we could talk about social issues and not everyone lose their minds. I think that right now we're living in a world where we need people who actually can manage tension. It's not, most of life isn't black and white, it's gray. And so we want to create a space where we can talk about that and talk about some tough stuff. So it's been a lot of fun. We get a lot of, feedback from it and stuff like that. Like we said, we only want 5-star ratings in the pod, no 1 stars, but no, it's a lot of fun. We love it.
All right. That's awesome. And you guys can find them. I know they're on Apple Podcasts, and they're all over the map, and you can make sure to follow Adrian and Ira as well as Corey on Twitter as well. But you're here for FSU basketball, and you're listening to this episode because, man, oh man, is FSU hoops. They're starting to hit that stride again. It's that we always joke that January stride where Florida State after the new year really figures some things out. And Bob, I want to throw it to you first. 3-0 this week, impressive wins all the way around. What were your takeaways?
I put an asterisk by this in the regular season. It's as impressive a 3-game, 1-week stretch out of Florida State basketball that I've seen in a long time. And I think we can probably go through the record books and find some wins over ranked teams, 2 or 3 in a row. It was a great week back when. But, man, in a pandemic, coming off a 2-week break, conditioning was a question. Ari, you mentioned this in the last podcast. How are they going to look against NC State? Conditioning, big question. Well, shoot, they come out and light it up 70% from the floor. So to stack not just one win, but to make it 3, I thought it was really one of the best weeks, again, for a regular season of FSU basketball.
Adrian, not only was it, a great week, but let's start with that NC State game because, again, you have a great perspective being able to call the games on radio. What did you see from Florida State when they came out, other than they made everything? Because we know sometimes basketball is it can be like that, right? The ball goes in the air and it's just starting to find the bottom of the net. But what did you see schematically from Florida State or personnel-wise that they started to do to be able to have some success?
Yeah, I think the NC State game was that NC State was a great game to come back to because of how I think this team, how NC State played. We struggle, which we'll get to later, Louisville, which I worried about Louisville because we struggle against pack line teams this year. NC State, they're going to try to press you. And it was ultimately how we handle the pressure would determine what we do. And so we actually did a really good job. And I think that just that team, this team's really good when the ball is moving from side to side. I mean, when we're 3+ passes, the level of efficiency just goes through the roof. And I thought that game, there was only 4. I counted like 4 or 5 like bad shots, and they weren't really like bad. They were just like, oh, you could have got a better one. It was like 4 or 5. I mean, that ball was going side to side. Guys were getting drives to the rim. And I think they came ready to play. But again, the people, I think sometimes we don't realize this. But if you look at Coach Ham over the last few years, I'll just say that they always have these moments, right? Last year, Western Carolina, we almost get beat by Western Carolina. And we all like, this team sucks. Like, we don't know how they're going to win. What are they going to do? Trent Forrest last year, is he going to be the guy, whatever. And then next thing you know, like, they do the run. Or the year before, they lose 4 straight. They lose 4 right before MLK. And next thing you know, they run like 8 or 9 in a row. But it's like I always tell people, it's like the Ham Jedi mind trick. You know what I'm saying? It's like he just like does his thing, and it's the most Leonard Hamilton thing ever. Where like you go on a 2-week pandemic and your team comes back, you're like, you look better than you did at the beginning of the year. It makes but I think that speaks to him actually really knowing the heartbeat of this group and what makes these guys tick. Him and the staff, they do a really good job.
Yeah, and for me, it was that I was able to talk to Coach Jones before the North Carolina game. I was down on the court, and he was telling me he thought that they were really able to get a lot of things done, almost like a refresher. When you go back, and he said, yeah, it sucks for conditioning because our guys, we don't want to be missing this much time. But at the same time, he said you almost got a freebie where you got to go back to the classroom after seeing what you did well and what you did poorly, and we were able to reteach them things that you might not normally be able to reteach in the middle of a grind of a season because you're playing so much. So he thought defensively they got a little bit better, and he said the ball movement, and he told me that before North Carolina. He said, I think the ball movement will be better today too. Just keep an eye out for that. And man, has it been, like you said, Adrian, when they're making 3 and 4 passes, I can't remember, I have all these box scores pulled up. Was it Louisville they had 19 assists? I think it was Louisville that had 19 assists on like 30 made baskets or something like that. And that's the type of rate that you want. So yeah, the offense is definitely getting better. It actually jumped. You guys are going to love this. It jumped from 40s in the Ken Pomeroy advanced statistics to a top 12 offense in a span of a week and a half. And it's amazing how that works. Adrian, let me ask you this before I go back to Bob. Because I want to kind of mesh all these 3 games together for the sake of time. North Carolina, another game in which in the first half, I thought we played really good on offense. We came out with a lot of energy, and we withstood some of their runs. That now was without Scotty Barnes. What does that say about this team's ability, again, 10 deep, to come out, and it's not about any one player. It's about having 10 guys that are 1 through 10, probably better than your roster.
Yeah, I think it's how even their recruiting to how their system. I think this team, it's predicated on you have to play 10 or 11 guys. So if you really think about it, like if you play here at Florida State, you're going to guard people. You're picking up 94 feet. And then on the other end of the floor, Coach Ham and the staff have got the expectation we use the pass and cut. I mean, like, I don't think people realize, like, that's a tiring way to play basketball. As a former player, man, you're always looking for moments to get, like, a quick break, and so what you saw, though, but what that leads to is everybody has an opportunity to play and to score and to step up. And it's just next man up. I mean, we just see it. It's like, Scott, you lose. Again, you don't have a lottery pick. Probably I think the most talented kid that's maybe stepped foot on this campus, and you're like, yeah, and you're playing against a blue blood, and again, it's like you don't skip a beat because it's next man up. And I think that's just this mentality that everybody realizes, like they all have a role, and I think they bought into it.
Yeah, and Bob, to Adrian's point, North Carolina, I think, ran out five stars on that day against Florida State. 4 of them were big men, and for Florida State to do that without Scotty Barnes, it just says about what development goes on in Tallahassee. So tell me this: we talk about development all the time, even when Florida State was not recruiting at that level that they are now. You knew kids were going to get better. You knew it might take 3 years, but they were going to turn into really good college basketball players. What have you seen from Raekwon Gray the past couple of games? Because, I mean, look, it's not Devin Vassell. He's not Devin Vassell. But the trajectory for me is the same type of man, he must have just figured it out overnight. But it is coaching as well, Bob.
Yeah, I feel awkward because you're president of the Raekwon Gray fan club here, but
dude, he is. He really is.
So Raekwon is just his story is almost like the quintessential Florida State basketball story. He's going to redshirt. He's going to reshape his body. He's going to dedicate himself to what he's got to eat, how he's got to work out. He's got to be disciplined, not just on the court, but there's food everywhere. You're a college basketball player. You can eat as much as you want. And his body, Coach Bradley was telling me a week or so ago, Raekwon's body type is one where he can add on, and it can get out of control if he were to let it. But for Raekwon to slim down, to have the energy to play that hard on both ends of the court, to be playing 30 minutes, and late in that Carolina game, he got a steal in a really tight game. And I can't remember what the score was at that point, but he gets that steal on the defensive end. And I'm like, that's the new Raekwon who has the energy to make all of these plays that they barely show up in the box score, but man, they contribute to a 7-point win over a blue blood. They're huge. And it goes beyond Raekwon. I mean, I know Anthony Polite's injured right now, but Anthony, same kind of thing. If you're listing the top guys on this Florida State roster, top to bottom, if you're doing a scouting report for another team, where's Anthony Polite? Is he really in your top 5? Well, maybe he is if he's a starter, but Anthony Polite is almost always that kind of forgotten guy because he just isn't Scotty Barnes and MJ and Balsa and all these others. And it's like Florida State keeps coming with these types of veteran glue guys. And I mean, honestly, it's why they win. That's why they do it.
Adrian, your perspective, because I know you've been able to talk to Turka quite a bit over the years, and that's just someone when you meet him, he's such a calm presence and such a good guy. Yeah. His teammates love him, and me and Bob were actually talking about because all these questions were coming out after the loss at Clemson. Who is the calming leader of this basketball team? Who's the guy that the team man, the Trent Forrest, that huddles everyone together? And it's just kind of, at the free throw line, everyone's arms are around each other, and they're just kind of having little powwows in the middle of the game, just little refreshers. I've started to see Raekwon Gray take that mantle a little bit. And I think he does have the personality for it because, as you've seen now, Adrian, he's starting to make those big plays when the team needs it the most.
Yeah, Turk's a special talent. I mean, I think that's the thing. And again, I 100% agree with Bob. He is the Florida State guy. He is the guy where you're next thing you know, Turk's going to probably be a first-round draft pick. And you're like, man, this Raekwon Gray guy, he came in my man came in, built like Warren Sapp, playing, and then next thing you know, my man's out there like Draymond Green, but it's the thing that they do. And I was, the best way I can explain Turk is briefly, as quick as I can to tell a story. And I'll never forget, he worked so hard and he's talented. I'll never forget his freshman year. I'm at practice. I'm in the backcourt with Coach Ham. And this is my first time seeing Turk in practice. They threw him the ball. Again, at this time, Turk's he's had to be 285, 290, right? And he gets the ball and they set a ball screen for him. And he splits a ball screen at 26 feet, makes a pass. And Ham, the funniest thing, Coach is he made the wrong read. And I looked at Coach and started laughing. And he's like, why are you laughing? I'm like, Coach. Man, Booger McFarland just split a ball screen and made an incredible read. I'm like, why? We'll figure out the right read. He split a ball screen from 26 feet, and Coach just started laughing. Yeah, you're right. And so my point of why I said that, Turk's always been super talented. He just has had to work. And you know what? And this is what I'll say. You're ready when you're ready. you know, a lot of times everybody wants, you know, like MJ Walker is a great example of that. He's a McDonald's All-American. Everybody wants kids to be ready. Like, you know, comes in and they think they're Scotty. No, you're ready when you're ready. And the one thing this Florida State team does is in the staff, they give those guys patience. They give them time to mature. And they give them the stuff they need. And they put real milestones in front of him. And he's just another guy stepping up. And he's going to be another one of those guys in Seminole history that's going to be a special one, like Trent Forrest was, or Devin, and all the other guys.
I watched Roy Williams. I was down there working stats for the ESPN broadcast, and to my right, Roy Williams watched Raekwon Gray hit a 17-foot jumper, a pull-up, and he just put his hands up because at that point, I think you could, even the opposing coaches go, well, if he's going to hit that, then there's really nothing I can do. There's nothing we have to be able to match up against him. And that's just when you're a pro, right? Like if you're a pro, you're lucky to contain somebody. You're never going to stop that person. And to me, Florida State has multiple of those players right now that they're just developing into these pros. And it's really impressive. Fellas, let's talk a little bit about Louisville because that was – I don't know if you want to call it. We've just kind of have their number, but we're not just beating Louisville right now. I think when Louisville walks onto a court against Florida State, I don't think they like seeing the Seminoles uniform.
Hey, every time we show up somewhere, it's like rent. Hey, it's like we show in the Yum Center, rent's due. You know what I'm saying? Hey, rent is due when we show up. It's kind of like us going down to your O'Connell Center. You know what I'm saying? Again, Coach Hand probably got two. Again, we need to rename the Civic Center after him, the Yum Center, and your O'Connell Center needs to be the Jalen or Hamilton, you know, the Ham Dome or something like that.
Yeah, no kidding about that. And Chris Mack had a really good comment, I thought, after the game, Bob. He said they have a lot of answers at a lot of positions. And it was I think it was almost like not a jab at his own team, but I think it was a self-reflection in the moment that Louisville has Carlik Jones, David Johnson, and the Withers. I think the Withers kid, who's pretty talented player down low for them. They did not have that many answers for Florida State, and they haven't for years. Bob, what is it about FSU that matches up so well against the Cardinals?
I thought it was hilarious. Chris Mack post-game was like out there. He's talking about how they got punked by Florida State, and he even dropped, you know, an S-bomb. He was pretty fired up about how Florida State took it to him in Louisville. And you know, it's just not just one guy. It's everybody on Florida State who started or was a reserve had a really significant contribution. So it's almost an impossible scouting report to me. I mean, even MJ, you know, 1 of 7 from the floor, but he's tired with only a day between games, but he still has 10 assists and 5 boards. And literally, if you pull up that box score, it's like fantastically filled with little nuggets of why Florida State wins games. It's rebounds and assists and steals. And I mean, man, then Balsa wants to run down the court and play like he's a 7-foot point center. So how do you match up with this? I mean, legitimately, I didn't play the game at a high level, but I don't know how you scout for a Florida State with that kind of length and depth and athleticism. It just, how do you?
I want to throw this to Adrian to get his thoughts on that game. But for me, quick note, I think like Louisville and Florida, I think they're just soft. Like I hate saying that. Like they're talented, but like when they play Florida State, when you get punked that fast, you're soft. I mean, like they were getting mauled by 4 Florida State defenders at the rim on layup attempts, and they didn't come back stronger the next drive. It was the same soft take, and I'm sitting there as neutral, right? Like neutrally watching. I'm going, man, they're shook, and they're shook quick. And Florida State feeds on that. When they know they have you, they start hitting threes. Your defense starts to break down. Louisville plays pack line, but they don't play it as well as Virginia does. And Chris Mack, I think, knows that about his team. He knows that they're still – that's a really young team, by the way. Louisville, I think, was like ranked in the 300s out of 360 teams that are playing right now in experience. So it's a young team with some talent, but – this is not the year to be young, I don't think, in college basketball, where you haven't had all the time to be able to warm up and get your summer workouts in and your normal schedule. So I just think they're soft right now. And I think Florida State, and they've been soft for a few years since Pitino left, because you used to have Montrezl Harrell, right? You used to have Peyton Siva. You used to have some dudes. Like you had guys that walked in, and Montrezl Harrell put it was Robbie Berwick on such a poster at the Tucker Center one year. They threw a half-court alley-oop, and Robbie Berwick jumped, and I said, please please don't jump. You should not have left your feet, man. But let him have his moment. And Montrezl Harrell threw one down in his face that was the same poster that Trent Forrest returned the favor in a similar way against Wara last year. But it's just FSU against Louisville, and Adrian, I think, alluded to it a little bit. It's just like rents do when they see us. And they I think for Louisville to beat Florida State, they're going to need to have a performance in which they just kind of get over the hump. The same way with Florida. But Adrian, what was your perspective of that game?
Yeah, I think that I would agree. I think, and I want to give, what I want to do is and I agree with you, is that there's a level of being soft, but I also want to say that I think this speaks to Florida State is that, like right now, it's kind of like the movie Friday. Right now we're at a point now, Debo comes around the block where you got to tuck your chain in when we're playing, because it's like we are just, you watch it and you agree, we're just relentless. But the only time I think I've seen this team get where I felt like they backed up the Florida State team was the one game, was UCF. And that Florida State team was not ready to play, and UCF had a chip on their shoulder, and they were just tougher. They were chirping in warm-ups, and this team kind of we're going to come in. But now you're starting to realize, they all know, we got to be ready to play. And I thought that's what they did. I think the most impressive, again, Bob spoke to, MJ goes 1 for 7, but he has 10 assists, right? Then, I think the guy who's starting to come along, who I think is going to be the key this year, is going to be Malik Osborne. Last year I thought it was Polite. I had said before the year, I talked to Stan about it. I was like, Polite's going to be the anchor. I think this year, because Malik is the spirit of this team. When he's going, is he brings it all. And the person who I'm loving is my man Balsa. Balsa is playing so Eastern European right now. You know what I'm saying? Before, Balsa was kind of, he's giving me that soft Euro. Now, my man Balsa's coming out of he's coming out of that part of Europe, where he's coming out of where Drago came from. He's giving you that type of toughness. And dude, somebody said it best. I put it on Twitter. Balsa, my man's out there looking slim, South Beach Diet Jokic out there. And so, and you love it. But here's what's interesting. I'll say this about Balsa. Of anyone who talks on this team the most to other people, it's Balsa, which is the funniest thing to me. Balsa chirps at everybody. And it's and you're of all people, everybody else is quiet, turking them, they'll come at you if you say something. But Balsa is turning it up all the time. And I love that about this group, because everybody just kind of has their role. So it's been great to watch. They just took their heart in as they played.
Believe it or not, I actually bonded with Balsa last year over Friends, the TV, the sitcom. That he said he learned some English from Friends, so I had him doing Joey impersonations, and he was funny. It's you don't feel like you would get that when you see Balsa, and then all of a sudden he opens up, and it's just this fun loving dude who he's a badass on the court. Let's not shortchange him because him going coast to coast, missing the layup, but he Euro step layup that's 7 feet like Kristaps Porzingis, and then got his own rebound. The second jump over 3 guards that could not believe that a man that big had just beat them up to the ball again, and he yams it home. Guys, it's a bunch of really good players that, Adrian, I think you alluded to it a little bit earlier. You're ready when you're ready, and I think sometimes your role dictates when you're ready, and it's just, Trent Forrest is not on this team. Patrick Williams is not on this team. Devin Vassell is not on this team. There are more usage percentage available and minutes available for you to kind of come into your own. And I think you're seeing a number of these guys taking those steps forward. Bob, another one of those guys that I think is taking a step forward is someone that we thought would come in and be an ACC Player of the Year candidate, Scotty Barnes. And the reason I say that is because Scotty's starting to look way more comfortable off the ball. He is who he is. He wants the ball in his hands. But what have you seen from Scotty, especially when he's in the game with another ball handler that's allowing him to grab rebounds and offensive rebounds and be able to dish assists? And he hit 2 of 4 against Louisville from beyond the arc. What are you seeing that's allowing him to be taking that next step in his progression as well?
I think kind of what you guys said, his time is going to come and he's getting settled in. I think he just had to know that there wasn't too much pressure on him, and maybe at times Florida State the veterans were a little too deferential, and maybe Scotty felt like, hey, I've got to make a play here and there. Like Indiana was a really good example with that late in the game. He kind of felt like the ball was in his hands and he had to make that play to get the W. But I think Scotty just has to use his instincts and vision and just be ready to take over when the moment is there and not feel like the weight of the world is on him. I think there's way too much preseason hype over Scotty, and it was all deserved now. But we're guilty of it in the media, and I think that it just happens. It happens as you lead up to a season. You get excited, and even the ACC media was like, this guy's first team All-ACC, hasn't played a minute of college basketball yet. But, hey, if he just settles in, I think, again, whether he starts, whether he comes off the bench, he's going to have really productive minutes and do big things.
Yeah. Adrian, I want to start with you because I want to get both of your thoughts on Osborne's dunk. I don't think it's quite Forrest over Wara. I think it was different because of the way Trent Forrest pretty much with his eyes pointed out Jordan Wara. It was one of those, like, when a running back points at a DB and says, let's go. It was kind of like that, non-verbally. Malik just kind of pump faked and took a drive. Adrian, what was your reaction when he threw that down?
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. And sometimes, being on the radio right now, I have to remember I'm on the radio, because I forget sometimes, So, I mean, I'm acting like just a normal fan, So as soon as he dunked, I think I yelled. I probably scared Gene half the time, because I yelled and I was like, on his head. I'm tapping my head like anybody, they can actually see me when it actually happened. But no, it was an amazing play. And I think why you love plays like that is I think more than anything else, as a coach's kid, as a basketball guy, I love watching plays like that, like in the flow of what you do. Ball gets on a kick out. What do you do? I mean, it was quintessential shot fake, downhill, one bounce. Wasn't a whole lot of flash to a shot fake. One bounce got downhill, and that's what you do. You go at people at the rim, and games like that, plays like that, change things. But yeah, I think that was great. And I love to see it from Malik. He has struggled early on in the year, but I think what Bob was saying about Scotty with Malik. There's these expectations, right? You go and then you see the Fiondu Kavangelis who come off the bench and get drafted. So now there's all this, okay, I got to, now, everybody, I try to tell people, what got you to the dance is what keeps you at the dance. Don't try to be something you're not. You know what I'm saying? Malik Osborne, if Malik Osborne is going to play at the next level, it's going to be because Malik Osborne is a heck of a defender. He rebounds the ball as an energy guy. I want to remind Malik Osborne, Montrezl Harrell is getting paid to just be like a goon. You know what I'm saying? My man's making millions of straight goon buckets. You know what I'm saying? You don't look at Montrezl Harrell oh man, look at that low post move. You're just like, that dude just tough. And he plays hard. And that's why I think Malik, once you find your niche, I always tell people, if you want to be a pro, you better do one thing a pro does. And one thing right now is a hot commodity in the NBA, guys who are small ball guys who can rebound the ball and defend. And he can do it. And I think he's finally settling in that that's who he is.
Yeah, Bob, and I know, Bob, you got to bounce here in a few minutes. I know dad duty calls sometimes, and you got to go take care of that. But last question I want to ask you, and then me and Adrian will wrap up 5 or 10 more minutes after that. One of my favorite parts of this stretch for FSU has been, yes, we've just talked about a lot of the roster and how they've taken steps forward. But in each of those 3 games, you had a performance from a player that you might not have seen coming beforehand. NC State, Nate Jack decides to turn into Steph Curry. He's hitting shots from the logo, and he's looking confident doing it. Against UNC, Tenor Ngam comes in and gives you some of the best minutes that he's given you at Florida State. And then against Louisville, Wyatt Wilkes reminds you that that's a vanilla sniper right there. That kid, if you leave him open and 2 feeters set, I'm sorry. That's the best shooter. That's one of the best shooters in the conference if he's got both feet set. How much have you enjoyed watching not only the main 6, 7, 8 players that have come in and you expect to kind of carry the day, but to watch those 3 who don't get a whole lot of minutes often? Sometimes, on a given night, the game plan calls and the game flow calls for 5 minutes from those guys, maybe less. What have you been able to see, and what does that say about this team that you really just can't prepare for them?
We always say sports are DVR proof, and I think it's DVR proof because you don't know what that drama is going to unfold and who's got a good matchup or who's just feeling it that night. And some nights it's Wyatt Wilkes, and some nights he starts and he's lighting it up. And like you said, next night it's Nate Jack, and we might not hear from him in the next game. But again, what's cool about it, how do you scout? How do you prepare for these guys? Because you don't know if the eighth guy off the bench is, the number 8 guy is going to be in trouble or what. It just makes it fun to show up and watch the games. And I think we've kind of commented, we hate it that with the pandemic, you're only getting 2,500 in the Tucker Center. So it kind of sucks so that, we don't get that crowded house. We don't get that true, Florida State home court advantage. But at the same time, we're getting some really high level basketball, and it just kind of makes you appreciate every game that we've gotten. And 8-2, it's been 10 really, really good games. I think the best from this team is still yet to come, obviously.
Absolutely. And Bob, appreciate you. I know we'll let you run. We'll have you back on Tuck Talk next week. You and I'll run it back. Appreciate you as always.
All right. Take it home, guys.
All right, Adrian. So I want to ask you that same question, just to keep the conversation flowing. When you get guys number 9, 10, and 11 on your bench to play like that in meaningful ACC minutes, I mean, just how do you prepare for that as an opposing coach?
I think how you have to prepare. If I was trying to prepare for Florida State, the biggest thing that I would do if I'm preparing for them is like you have to honestly, you got to play pack line honestly and hope they don't make shots. Because the other night, Louisville, they're making shots, you ain't beating them. They're not because here's the thing. If they're making shots, that ball's going to get swung. And what happens is that they just have so many different lineups you can go with, right? So you saw the other night, we're playing well, we're killing them. Chris Mack's a good coach. They made an adjustment. They start stringing the ball screen out more. So they're dragging it. And so that run, the Gomes in the game, they start making that run. So what do? They come out second half. They haven't done it. This is the thing about having so many players. They've not played Malik Osborne that early and playing him at the 5, where how they did last year where they go Turk and then him. They did that at the 17, 18-minute mark because of what was happening. And now all of a sudden, it changed the game. And then you got Balsa playing well. And the thing about Balsa this year, he can stay in. They switch 1 through 5. And again, what's the kid's name? The point guard. I'm blanking right now. For Louisville, really good player.
Carlik Jones or David Johnson.
Jones. Yeah, no, Carlik Jones. You look at him, there's multiple times we're in a switch situation with Balsa guarding him, and Balsa uses his 7-foot length to just contest because that's 7 foot, and that's amazing. So that's what makes this group so hard to play against because they can play multiple lineups. And at one point in time, you literally had 4 guards. You had Wilkes, Scotty. Wilkes, Scotty. I think you may have had Raekwon Evans, and I think Nate Jack may have been as one of those guys in the game. You have 4 of those guys, and then you had Osborne. So literally, you have 4 guards, and Malik Osborne, who they give him 6'8", who's probably about 6'6.5". You know what I'm saying? And you still can't beat them because now all of a sudden they're spreading you out, and you're really going to get toast. You know what I'm saying? So they're just hard to prepare for because you don't even know who to prepare for sometimes.
Yeah. Are you impressed with the way, because it's kind of a self-reflection for me too. I did not think this offense would get better when you lose Trent Forrest, Devin Vassell, and Pat Williams. I thought it could still be a good offense. But they're finding ways to put the ball in the basket, and it changes from night to night. Some nights NC State lets you run all over them, and you get a bunch of 2s at the rim, uncontested. Some nights, Carolina has a big post presence, but, you're hot from beyond the arc and you get to the free throw line. And some nights, you don't get to the free throw line against Louisville, and you're just finding ways to swing the ball and get into transition and get buckets in that way. Are you impressed with the answers FSU's been able to find on the offensive end?
Yeah, I've been floored with how they've played and but I want to remind us, last year, I had the same thought. Where are we going to get baskets from? Because, if you think about it, Trent's never been a 20, 25-point game a night. Remember, Devin Vassell became Devin Vassell last year. We saw glimpses of that in Pittsburgh early on, right? Pat Williams Pat Williams didn't start playing like Pat Williams until like as the year went on. So we had moments. Remember last year early with the ball was like, where are we going to get points from? Like, it wasn't like the year before or the year when you had like, XRM and Bacon and all those guys where they're scoring like, 3,000 points a game, right? But all of a sudden, this group finds its rhythm. And I felt the same way earlier. I'm like, dude, we get stuck. How are we going to score? Who's going to go get you a bucket? And they're just finding a way. Because what's happened? Here's why. It's every year somebody takes a big step. And what MJ Walker has done, he's done this. MJ Walker has settled in. And I think, my heart's always gone out for MJ. MJ's one of the top 10 guys to ever come out of the state of Georgia, ever, in basketball, high school. I think people don't realize how good MJ Walker was in high school. And now you have all this pressure to be a pro. And now you're a sophomore, junior, still there. And you got guys who you played with who you were better than who are going to the league. What MJ finally has done, he's settled in. And you know what? I watch him. You watch that first game back against NC State. He doesn't hunt shots. He lets it come to him, and my man just gets it done. And so I'll say this. I'm shocked, but I'm not shocked because every year somebody takes a step up. Next year, you're going to see it. Everybody's going to be talking about all these new freshmen coming in, and watch it ends up being somebody like Polite or Turk, or Boss. It'll be somebody who's in the thing. You're like, man, I did not expect, 16 or 18 to come. I mean, dude, think about this real quick, Ari. Like, if we really wanted to, like, Coach could play Justin Linder. Like, he could play Justin Linder. So, man, listen, Justin Linder is, like, Justin Linder can hoop. I don't think, like, people don't get, Justin Linder can hoop. Like, I was like the other day, I'm like, man, listen, I would have gave Justin Linder some burn. Like, Justin Linder gives a burn for me. Once Polite was out, like, I'm getting at least 2-3 minutes because he gets in the game. And my man, and I love Justin Linder personally because he's so confident. Like, I've never seen a more confident walk-on in my life. My man's like, oh, yeah, I can hoop against anybody. He's out there just like Steve Nash and that thing. I'm like, but anyway, but that's just this group, man. Everybody steps up. Everybody gets better.
You're going to think this is funny. Against North Carolina, I'm sitting courtside doing stats. And so, the guys are to my left, maybe 5 feet away from me. And Linder comes up to the bench, comes up to the platform. And every time we did something nice, he'd look at me and I'd look at him and he'd go, you like that? You like that? You like that? And I'm like, dude.
I love him.
That kid loves Florida State, man. That kid loves the basketball program. They love him. And every time he does get a minute or two into the game, he shows you that he can hoop. He shows you that he has an IQ for the game that's through the roof. Yep. I think he can play professionally somewhere, I think, in his career. And if he decides to go into coaching, he's going to be a phenomenal coach.
He will be. But here's what people don't know about Justin Linder. Justin Linder, like, and this speaks to his character, but also just the character of the coaching staff. Like CY, every day, 5-6 days a week, right? When all the guys, or whenever the guys, they have the ability to kind of do some extra work or whatever. CY's in the gym. He has what he calls like little quick hits that he does with them. One of the main guys there, Justin Linder, and I watch CY. CY gives Justin Linder the same energy and intensity that he does Devin Vassell. And so Justin Linder works on his game. And you know what? And that's why guys like that, man, like they have a chance. I mean, listen, Justin Linder could go right now to he could go easily into the A-Sun. Justin Linder go in A-Sun right now and start for most teams and go do something. You know what I mean? Like that's where, he's like that good kid, but that just speaks to these, like the culture this team has. Like where you have walk-ons who like work on their game all the time. Like guys who aren't going to play, they're working on their game in order to continue to push the stuff they need to push out to help the team. That just speaks to this culture. And this is what I'll say. When you have a healthy culture in an organization, you just get planted in it and you just get better. That's why I'm telling you, you're going to see this. Mark my words. Scotty Barnes is about to get real special, like real special, because it's like what happened with Pat Williams. He had to get settled. He's not, he's like Pat. He's not he's not a Cade Cunningham where he's a ball dominant guy. But you watch him, he's about to start getting super, super special. And I'm telling you, if that kid keeps shooting it at the clip he's shooting at, he's confident. I heard one NBA guy I was talking to say this. They're like, if he can shoot over 40 from the three, they were like, he could potentially, they're like, he could be the number one pick. I mean, he's Magic Johnson, man. That dude, listen, and he ain't normal. I tell people all the time, that dude is from Professor Xavier's School of the Gifted. That kid is a mutant. Like, you can't teach what he has. Like, he got, when God was making people, he gave him a little bit of that extra basketball sauce when he made him, because he just got some stuff on him.
No doubt about that. And I think one of the things too, when he's hitting shots, what's I think pretty devastating for any opposing team is FSU has 7 or 8 guys already who can shoot the 3 ball. I mean, Ham has mentioned he thinks this could be his best shooting team that he's had at Florida State because there's just so many options. And we touched on it a little bit with the pack line and saying we might struggle with the pack line here and there. And maybe we will. Virginia's going to be tough. But when you shoot the way you shoot, I think Tony Bennett's a little worried about Florida State, them going underneath ball screens and FSU just hitting threes left and right over the top, because this reminds me of some of those Virginia Tech teams that Buzz Williams had, where it was like you got 6 or 7 guys that can light it up from beyond the arc. That to me is one of the reasons why the offense has been so special. And you've been around the college basketball game a really long time. Why is shooting so important, and why is it the name of the game?
Shooting is important because the way it's always been, but it's more than anything else because how the game's played now. And I think you got to go back to the idea of, I think one of the most influential, a guy who people talk about, who I think is one of the most influential people that's ever played the game of basketball is Steph Curry. I think 2 things: Steph Curry, the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat team, when they went to, have positionless basketball with LeBron and those guys, where the floor started to get spread, and then you had Steph Curry and what he's able to do. And I think shooting is the name of the game. If you can't shoot the basketball, you can't play at a high level. Let me say this. Your team can't win games because now everybody's just going to pack you in. You look at it, just straight statistics. It's like 5% of the shot, 3, corner threes and layups and drives, And I think that's where this Florida State team, if you watch them, I tell people, watch actually what they do. They catch and shoot threes, or they're doing what? They're getting to the rim, or they're getting stuff they work on. Drive hard to the paint, 2-foot pops into floaters. That's all they do. And I think you got to be able to shoot the ball because, again, the way the game is spread out, the way it's played now, and you play small ball, you got to be able to do it. I think that's why times North Carolina struggles, because they go back to that way of they got 2 bigs and and it's just crowded. It's just crowded. And I think that's why, shooting is so important now.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I love watching Florida State do ball reversals and handoffs at the top of the key, or they'll set a screen or 2, and everything's designed to get into the paint and go from there. Because then you're collapsing a defense and you're getting it out. And I think you look at our free throw rates too. We're getting to the free throw line this year at a pretty good clip and hitting at a high rate. Offense comes in many different forms. And I think this FSU team, even without a natural true point guard in the college sense, I know Scotty will be an elite ball handler at the next level. They're finding ways to put points up. And I think that's why this team is ranked 12th in the country in offensive efficiency. And to me, it's a testament to Ham, to CY, to Stan Jones, and to Coach Smith, because they have always what's the right word? They've progressed, and they have continually tried to get better. Ham has never stuck to one thing, and that to me is a sign of a great coach.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, and I think that. But we also, we in basketball, it's way more than just what you do on the court. It's so much the mental and emotional, and I think they really address this well. When I think people, these kids, they all are facing this pandemic and coming there. I think also what people have to realize, man, with Keontae Johnson and that situation, and that really, I don't care who you are. I'm not playing. My son plays. I'm a father. That rattled me for a long time. I can imagine those players. You look at the mental. Think about Raekwon. Think about Raekwon Evans. Raekwon Evans against Central Florida was awful. He was awful to a point where I'm like, he's mentally done. We gotta get somebody else. And then to this coaching staff's credit, whatever they do, they spent time, they built his confidence, they worked with him. Next thing you know, this kid has been unbelievable. Where I thought, I'm like, okay, well, he's just going to it's going to be a year where he's going to be one of those guys that just didn't pan out. And now my man has been special the last few games. And so, again, I just think it's what they do. They progress these guys both mentally and emotionally. and both on the court. That's one thing that David Nichols always says. He's like, man, the one thing he's grateful for being here at Florida State is when Florida State talked to him about this idea of emotional intelligence. He's like, that's the most important gift that Coach Ham ever gave him, was teaching him how to be emotionally intelligent. And again, because I tell people, everything you do rises, it starts with your emotions. So I think about it, every good decision, every bad decision you do, it's because you felt some type of way. And that's what Coach Ham really works with these guys on. And I think that's why when they get pressure situations, they get in moments, they have the fortitude to stay and remain who they are. This team is who they are. They know who they are. They play the way they are. They're not trying to be something they're not, and they're tough enough to remain that way.
Let's wrap up with a little bit of a broader ACC picture, and then we'll talk about Clemson because that game's coming up here on Saturday. That's another big one. Malik Osborne said he circled it on his calendar because he can't wait to get back at the Tigers. But the ACC doesn't seem to be as deep as it usually is, and certainly maybe not as deep as the Big Ten or the Big 12 this year. The Big Ten's ridiculous right now. But the ACC, this is a chance for Florida State to, I think, again, it looks like it's FSU, UVA. Those two teams seem to be the class of the league.
It is. And here's the one thing I want to say to all these like talking heads and all these guys who vote this, like at some time you're going to stop disrespecting Florida State 5th, 6th, 7th in the conference. Like it's maddening because you know what? Like Duke or UNC or all these, they come in and you're like, yeah, they're not like great. They got 5 stars, but they're bringing the same kids back, right? And you're like, they weren't great last year, so now they're going to be better. Like, but yes, FSU, it's a constant thing. So it's like the fact that wherever we were ranked early, it's like, yeah, we're one of. I think we're the best team in the ACC, but us in Virginia. And I think that's where it's going to come down to. I think it's a 2-man race right now, and it's just going to be for us. Here's the biggest thing with Virginia. Will we play the way we want? Because Virginia baits you into one. When this team gets in trouble, is one pass shots or straight line drives off the no ball reversal and try to score. They bait you, and that's the only way I have Virginia. If that's what happened with us against Clemson. If that ball's moving, you're not beating us. If we get that ball 3 passes, that we're like, you're just not going to beat us because we're just got too many guys who can score, and you can't guard that long. And so I think that's the race. I think that, Clemson's good, but I think at the end of the day, like there's something about being on the show enough and being on the stage enough to when it gets to crunch time, when it gets to, you got to be that dude, they just saying, I don't think they got it. They don't got people who won. And Florida State's got winners. You know what I'm saying? That's why Duke, they get hot. They got, they've learned that program winners, Carolina or whatever. And so I think it's going to come down between us and Virginia. I think now what I will tell you is this Louisville, they get hot. So I think Chris Mack, though we went there and took their heart, I think Chris Mack's a really, really good coach. So I think they always got a shot, but I think it's going to be a 2-man race.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I think this should be a lot of fun to watch. So Clemson coming up. The last time Florida State played Clemson, really it was a great game till about the 8-minute mark of the second half. It looked like Clemson hit that run, and we just stopped hitting. Shots were not falling for Florida State that day, especially in the second half. I'm looking at some of these box score numbers, Adrian, from that game. Some things that popped out to me about Clemson. Yes, they're back to being a very good defensive team. Brad Brownell is a defensive-minded coach. They're 6th in the country in defense. That last game, Florida State, 0.92 points per possession, only 67 points total. Didn't shoot the ball well from beyond the arc, only 28%. And the areas that I think we circled, Adrian, and some of them, look, free throw shooting, it's kind of one of those, it's very volatile, right? Like on the road, you might not get the same whistles you get at home. Clemson shot 33 free throws, 24 of 33. Florida State attempted only 9. And then you couple that with 19 offensive rebounds for Clemson in that one. A team that's not a great offensive rebounding team had collected 40% of their misses. And that's pretty much why Florida State lost. You can look at free throw line and second chances for Clemson. What does FSU have to do? And maybe it is as cut and dry as get to the free throw line and rebound the ball. What do they have to do this time around against the Tigers? I mean, it's a different Florida State team too. It is.
I think they have to do what they were doing early in that game. And it's this. Clemson, I think at that point in time, if I'm not mistaken, Clemson was like a anywhere between 32% three-point shooting team. Early on, they did make shots. What we did was this. second half of that second half, we started allowing straight line drives. Early on in that game, Clemson only scored one basket that was outside of 15 feet, that was outside of free throw. And so literally you got to make them shoot over your hands. We have to play the Florida State way, which is it. We challenge every shot. So not that you mean shoot over their hands, but hey, they penetrate, you cover the gap and you get out and you're able to you really hard contest, make them put on the floor. Because listen, if they have to shoot over our hands, we're fine. Because that's what we did. But when here's what happened. They get confidence making a few buckets. It's like I tell my son all the time, like, listen, if you're not making threes, Chief, put the ball on the floor, go get you a bucket. And that's what they did. They got a bucket. They started getting going, and then they started making shots. So I think we've got to rebound the ball, and we just got to honestly just make them shoot over our hands. If we limit paint touches, we win the game. Because I don't think they don't have enough firepower to do that, unless they just get freakishly hot or something like that and make shots. But that's what it comes down to. And I think you're just going to see a different Florida State basketball team than you saw during that time. And I think Brad Burnell and this team. One thing about Florida State team is this: the scary part is that they've had now. Well, we're coming into that. They're going to have 3 or 4 days to actually prepare for them after a loss. Please understand this. Like, this Florida State team coming out here, like Malik Osborne is saying, it's coming out there and they're coming to put a foot on somebody's throat. Like, there's no going to be like, they are going to come to try to embarrass them, and this is going to, I tell Florida State, it's like Floyd Mayweather. It is a prize fighter, and we're going to wait that 8-minute mark, and then we're just going to just wear you out. And I think that's what you'll see this week.
Yeah, and for the listeners who are listening right now to this podcast, something I always like to do, Adrian, is just kind of go through Ken Pomeroy's his advanced stats on the team. So Clemson right now, 33rd in the country according to Pomeroy, 6th on defense, 78th on offense. It's nothing to write home about offensively. They want to play slow. They're 297th in the country in tempo. So that's a team. And Brad Brownell did that in the second half. He really slowed the game down last time and wanted it to be Clyde Trapp and Alamir Dawes, Nick Honor kind of going downhill at Florida State. Here's what they do well. They turn people over on defense. They're top 10 in the country in forcing turnovers. They don't get to the free throw line, which is what was so crazy about that game was they got to the line 33 times, and they ranked 325th in the country at getting to the free throw line. We're hoping for different whistles in Tallahassee. Look, man, it happens every year, Adrian, on the road once or twice. Pittsburgh last year, remember? A team just gets every call when they start driving. And the refs, they feel the flow of the game, and the refs just kind of get into a flow of their own, and it's a lot of whistles. And so if FSU, like you said, keeps them out of the paint, I like the Noles' chances in this one. It's not a good shooting Clemson team. And Ken Pomeroy gives Florida State a 64% chance of winning this thing. So about a 70-66 win. He does think it'll be a low possession game, 67 possessions or so. But he does like the Noles in Tallahassee. So that's something to keep an eye on for FSU. If the Noles can win, you're talking 4 wins in a row. You moved yourself to the top of the ACC standings with Virginia. Those guys are looking really good, and a big game at the Tucker Center on Saturday. Adrian, I want to thank you for joining us this week. It's always a pleasure to hear your insights. You're welcome back on this pod anytime. Let the people know where they can find you on your social media.
Yeah, you guys can find me. Again, you can find me on Twitter. Again, especially if you want to follow me if you want to follow me very specifically for FSU stuff, kind of my thoughts I have there. You follow me on Twitter at Adrian Crawford, ADRIAN, CRAWFORD. I'm on Instagram, Adrian Crawford 5 as well. Yeah, so follow me at your own risk. All right. Again, I like to have fun, but I also like to talk about FSU hoops and things like that. So I like to do a breakdown at the end of every game, kind of keys to the game or whatever. So hopefully it's helpful. And I love watching. Thank you guys. Ariya, I appreciate you having me on. And anytime I come on and talk hoops, man, I love this team and I love this program and what they're doing. Again, it's, when everybody talks about in basketball today, man, what's wrong with basketball? This Florida State team is what's right with basketball. They just do it. They play the right way. They play basketball the right way. And you love to see it. You love to see it in an age where everybody thinks players are so selfish. They do. They see the one-on-one basketball. Watching a team legit. I hope everybody really appreciates the fact that we had the number 4 draft pick come off the bench. who's a kid in the NBA right now who's starting. Like, it's just like, I don't think people realize what that takes, the buy-in. But that speaks to how special this program and culture is. And you're just going to see it more and more. I mean, because even the group we got coming in next year is super special. So it's fun. I mean, man, there's a great time to be here, as a Florida State basketball fan.
No doubt about that. You're welcome back on this podcast anytime that you would like. All right, Tuck Talk for Bob Ferrante, for Adrian Crawford. Please give us 5 stars on Apple Pods if you can. Share this thing with your friends. And as always, go Noles. We appreciate you.